All right.
Hello, and welcome to our April meeting. We are coming to you again from our homes and remote places to bring you information about our coalition and about what's going on. We are working diligently to continue our initiatives in the community as best we can, and to make sure that you're all updated on current information and events. So we thank you all for joining us today. My name is Amanda Ingolinsky.
My name is Carly Crawford.
And let's get started.
All right. So in case you missed it, we've been posting some content on our YouTube channel. So if you search Be Aware Blount, it should pop up. And I included the screenshot in case you can't find it. So we posted last month's meeting on there, and then we also had the chance to interview Kristen Robinson, who created the Thrive program at Village Behavioral Health, about some changes to look for in your child during this time. She really talks about coping skills, creating some positive coping skills that can last a lifetime, and now's a good time to try to get those started. So if you're interested in any of that content, it's free to check out, and then we will also be posting this video as well as more content in the weeks to come.
Okay, so true to our format for our live meetings, we did want to continue to bring you information from scholarly articles that we've been reading on and researching. And so the topic that I picked today for my article to share is COVID-19 and smoking and vaping, and kind of how those things are linked and associated, and the risks we need to be thinking about when we're talking about those things. So the first thing I want to say is that, we're always tobacco and vaping. That's one of our major initiatives. So we're always thinking about that, and we're always trying to promote good information on risks and benefits to quitting. But right now, especially, we wanted to make sure to bring you some credible information on what we've been able to find. The first thing that I'll mention is that there are tons of misinformation on the internet. So as far as being able to find credible sources, it really depends on what interested party is promoting that information to you. So that's the first kind of caveat that I would say is be careful when you're reading and you're sharing information to make sure that you know who is funding that research and who is promoting the research that's out there. So I've chosen the American Lung Association to use for my primary resource, but I've also pulled from other articles as well. So the first thing that we want to know is what is the actual risk to vaping and smoking right now with the COVID-19 pandemic that's going on. The CDC has identified smokers and vapors as a high-risk group for severe illness if they contract COVID-19. So COVID-19 is a lung function that aggressively attacks the lungs and even leaves lung cells and tissue dead as a result of that virus. Our lungs rely on normal defenses in our airways to keep bacteria and viruses in check and at bay. So when we inhale substances like tobacco or vape emissions, that does affect the lung's ability to function. And more importantly, it does create inflammation in our airways. And so the presence of that inflammation in combination with a virus like COVID-19 makes it difficult for our lungs to fight off infection. And so that creates an increased risk for severe complications. So some of those complications that would result in hospitalizations. Smoking or vaping anything makes a person more susceptible to complications from COVID-19, and there's lots of debate there. So you'll hear some different things right now, and these are current articles that are kind of breaking every day. Some people or some sources will say that vaping isn't as high of a risk as smoking is for COVID-19, or if you're vaping THC, that looks different. The truth is we don't know, and the reality is if you're inhaling anything that is going to create that inflammation in your lungs, that's really what's increasing that risk factor. So there's still a lot of research that's going into this, since this is a relatively new virus in terms of research. Smokers aren't necessarily more likely to contract the disease but they are more likely to experience those severe symptoms that result in hospitalization. And in fact, they're 2.4 times more likely to experience a severe complication from COVID-19 than non-smokers. So the last piece that you need to know as well is that, of course, smoking and vaping, they both harm your immune system. And so that's going to decrease your ability to fight off infection, even if it isn't COVID-19, any kind of bacteria or virus. It would make it more difficult for your body to naturally fight those off. And the last piece I want to mention too is, of course, for any individual that has substance misuse, whether it be vaping, smoking, or other drugs or alcohol, a lot of times there are comorbidities that come along with that. So co-occurring health issues like cardiovascular issues that would affect your ability to fight off infection and disease and put you at a higher risk for severe complication or hospitalization as a result of COVID-19. And we're talking about this because we have cases in our community, and we want you guys to be armed with the facts surrounding this. It seems like one of the most prevalent ways right now, at least, that we can keep ourselves safe and healthy and our families as well. And professionals at this point are recommending, if you can quit, if you're a smoker or vapor, if you can quit, now certainly is the time to do that. If you can't quit, reducing is better than quitting, than not reducing. So if you're not able to quit, but you can cut back, of course, that's going to help as well. And they are recommending things like cessation tools such as gums, patches, anything that you're not inhaling. So ordinarily, we know that vaping kind of emerged as a tool, a cessation tool, to stop smoking and to quit altogether. Professionals are not recommending that right now. If you're a smoker, switching to vaping, it's still going to kind of have that same effect on the lungs and tax the lungs in a similar way. And so that's not the recommendation right now. For those of us that are in quarantine, that are staying at home, you know, there's kind of a split opinion there on, well, if you're at home, that's the perfect time to quit any unhealthy habit. And it should be easier. We should have more time, whatever. The flip side to that is, for those of us that are at home and still experiencing high levels of stress, be it from having to be sharing our workspace with maybe other individuals that are also trying to work, or having children to attend to, or financial concerns and worries as a result of COVID-19, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's super easy to then quit smoking. That could actually trigger more smoking and more vaping while you're at home. So there are a few things that the American Lung Association recommends for some techniques there for changing or breaking bad habits. The first is to really identify your triggers and figure out, you know, what is it that's causing your stress specifically. I think it's very easy for any of us that are trying to develop a healthy habit or stop a bad habit to say, well, it's stress in general, and I don't really know how to break that down. But trying to identify some specifics around your triggers are very helpful, especially if you're stuck at home. So that's the first step. The second thing that they recommend doing is changing your physical space. So in your home, if there are certain places where you do certain things, so if you tend to go onto your patio to smoke a cigarette, or if you sit in a specific chair when you vape, or whatever that looks like, what they're recommending doing is, if you're seriously considering cutting down or quitting, you need to move your space around a little bit and change that physical design to really open up the ability to break that habit. That'll really cut down on that association that you may have developed. They recommend, especially if you live with other individuals that smoke or vape, to talk with those individuals and to be very open about the fact that you want to stop. We know that it's very difficult if you're in a home where others are smoking or vaping. But even if you aren't in a home where other people are using tobacco or vape products, it's good to talk to your supports and say, like, I really want to do this. This is something that I am concerned about, and, you know, I want to stop, and I could use your support. So we would recommend that as well. The last piece of information that I wanted to share is that there is an online platform that you can use. It's called freedomfromsmoking.org. It's through the American Lung Association. And so what they'll do is they'll create a personalized cessation plan for you. And those are available on multiple platforms. So you can use your smartphone, your tablet, your laptop, and those resources are still available to you. So, you know, I know we're always, again, concerned about helping people cut back or quit smoking. That's something we always talk about. Right now, we really do feel like it's paramount, and it's something to be concerned about. And especially if you have teens in your homes and you're suspicious that they've been vaping, that does make them more susceptible to disease, but specifically to complications with COVID-19.
All right, so next I wanted to talk about this article called FDA Review of E-Cigarettes is as critical as ever, any delay must be brief, because over the past few years, there's been a lawsuit going through the courts, and so basically tobacco and e-cigarette companies are required to demonstrate a public health benefit to their products for them to stay on the market. So these products would have to be approved through the FDA, and now the FDA has requested a 120-day extension of the final ruling due to the current pandemic. And so this is of particular concern right now because, as we know, and as Amanda just told us, if you smoke or if you use vaping devices, you are more at risk for severe complications from COVID-19. And so these products would be continuing to stay on the market through this extension. And so people would continue to be at risk due to these products. So many organizations such as the American Heart Association and the Truth Initiative are expressing concern for this delay, particularly because the companies have had since 2016 to prepare, and this is just perpetuating more dangerous scenarios for our citizens. And so, as far as I know, the extension has not been granted yet, but it would extend it through September, and it could potentially be extended beyond that. And meanwhile, these products would still be on the market. So I just wanted to touch on that as that's going through the news. So keep your eyes out for any information on that. And then next, last month, I talked about an article written by Dr. Nora Volkow, who is the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, or NIDA. She essentially was talking about the potential implications of COVID-19 and people with substance use disorders. And so to recap a little bit, she basically said people with opioid or methamphetamine use disorder or anyone who misuses substances can be at a higher risk for negative pulmonary or respiratory health effects, which can make the severity of their symptoms of any disease more severe. And so she recently wrote a new article called Collision of the COVID-19 and Addiction Epidemics. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. As I kind of just said, she is saying that compromised lung function from COVID-19 can put people with substance use disorders at more risk. And then some of the fringe effects that some of us might not think of firsthand, housing instability and incarceration, as well as reduced access to healthcare and recovery support services, are really affecting people with substance use disorders right now. Also, people with opioid use disorder are experiencing a lot of challenges right now because many syringe service programs have been shut down due to social distancing. So people might not be able to access clean syringes or Narcan or naloxone to reverse an opioid overdose. And so social distancing, if anyone with an opioid use disorder is practicing social distancing and they're still using, there's a higher chance that they could overdose because no one would be around to administer Narcan or naloxone. And so this is grim. I think that it's important to address, though. And so while we don't have any immediate solutions, I've included the Tennessee Red Line number, which is a great resource. If you're looking for resources, they can connect you with people in your area who are still working. And So that's something to consider. And then we are also looking into temporary alternatives during social distancing and quarantine. And so we will have an update on that soon, because we could potentially be able to provide some products or services to mitigate these adverse effects.
Another thing, if I can add to that too, is if you are in recovery or if you're a support person for someone in recovery, now is a great time to talk with those individuals about a relapse prevention plan. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but making sure that you or that the people that you care about who may be tempted to use or in active addiction are equipped with what to do, and kind of planning around the fact that some of those resources are not readily available in our community right now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so everyone's favorite time of the year, favorite training, or Title VI training. We ordinarily plan to do this in the spring, since it looks like we're not going to be seeing people at least face to face for a little bit still. We are planning on sending this out in link form. We have the information to send out, and we'll be doing that today. It's a PowerPoint presentation, and if you can just read through it, most of you, if you've been in our coalition for very long, we do this every year, so it's familiar information. But then if you can let me know directly, if you can reach out to me and say, I've completed this training, then I'll update our files that way. This is important. I know that it's something that we do, and it may not be everyone's favorite training, or most exciting training, I guess, but it is something that keeps us in compliance with our contracts. We have state and federal dollars that we receive, which requires us to make sure that all of our staff and our coalition members are trained. I am your Title VI coordinator, so if you ever have any concerns regarding Title VI or questions, please reach out to me directly and let me know. But keep an eye out, because we will be sending that information out for training later today. And then last but not least, just to wrap up with some other updates that we have here, we've posted a list of online recovery resources and platforms, virtual platforms, to our social media accounts. It's really taken off. We're doing pretty well with that, but another way that you can really help us is by liking, commenting, and sharing on our social media resources that we post. We only have access to the people that are in our social circles of influence, but when you share in yours, then that's more people that we have access to in the community, and a further scope of reach with that. So if you're able to, if you can use those, that's great. If you don't necessarily need recovery resources, it's still great to share that information, because you never know who might. But all of those resources are completely virtual, online, and it's for any kind of addiction that a person might be struggling with. I want to let Carly talk about a TikTok development with our youth.
Yes. So on TikTok, there has recently been something called the Nutmeg Challenge circulating. So a lot of teens have expressed that their parents are going to drug test them during quarantine. And so they need/want something to get around that. And that's where this Nutmeg Challenge comes in. So essentially, people are ingesting very high amounts of nutmeg, and it can create hallucinations, dizziness, confusion, nausea. They describe it as a sort of high. And so with this, we don't want to create any sort of hysteria. There have been no reported cases in our area. I just wanted to address this because I've seen over 10 postings of this sort of challenge, and I know that if I'm seeing it, a lot of other people are too. And so it's just something to keep in mind, but definitely nothing to be extremely worried about. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
I was just going to say, if you have a kid that has a TikTok account, now is definitely the time to be asking them what their content looks like, or to have access to their content. There's there are tons of resources on TikTok specifically, on the internet in general, but on TikTok specifically, that really endorse and teach teens how to abuse substances. So that's something to know. If you don't know if your kid has a TikTok account, now's a great time to find out. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that later as well. But it is something, it's not necessarily something that we're seeing in our community, but we want you all to have that information. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we do have free COVID-19 testing at our Blount County Health Department right now. What you will want to do is if you suspect that you have symptoms, that you've come in contact with someone that tested positive, you will want to give the health department a call before you go down there. So we've attached all their information here on this slide, but give them a call if you need that, and they will give you further instructions there. Our May coalition meeting will not be in person. We just kind of heard from United Way that they're going to be canceling all of their in-person meetings for the month of May as well. And they're just trying to be really diligent about reducing the spread of illness in our community. So we will have a similar format that we've had for March and April now for our meetings. We really appreciate all of you that have been viewing our YouTube channel, that have been commenting or sharing or liking. We definitely appreciate that. If there's anything specifically that you'd like to see look different, or that you'd like us to add in terms of content, please let us know. Just by interacting with our social media posts in any way, you again are helping us drive our message further into the community with influence that we wouldn't normally have. So we appreciate that, and we see that as a major way that y'all can be helpful in our initiatives. And the last thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, we want to hear from you. We want to know about the things that are happening in your individual agencies that you work for. We want to, so many of us feel helpful or useless right now because we're outside of our normal scope of responsibilities. We're not necessarily in our same workplaces, but one thing that we can do is we want to spread good information and good resources about our community with our community. So if you have updates to your specific agency or organization that you work for, please let us know, and we want to share that and help distribute that in our community. And the last thing that I want to say is, if any of you guys have really positive stories, some hoorays that you want to share about how you're dealing well with this unprecedented time, we want to hear about that too. You know, we've talked about so many kind of bleak things. Our messaging, I think, gets really saturated nowadays with some negativity surrounding the pandemic and surrounding how people's lives have been affected. And of course, we don't want to take away from that because it is real and it's important. But I think it's also equally important to know that there are so many people in our community that are still doing amazing things. So if you're a person in recovery, if you're living with a person in recovery, and you're being successful, we want to hear that because that's powerful. For those of our essential workers that are still out in our community, keeping us safe and keeping our community running. So our healthcare professionals, our law enforcement, individuals working in food industry and sanitation and so many other sectors, you know, we want to hear how you're coping as well and how you're dealing with it, because you really are making our community safe and livable for whenever we are finally out of this time. So we want to hear the good things as well, and we want to share those things because we feel like it's just as important. So on that note, Carly, do you think that we've forgotten anything? Is there anything else we need to mention?
I think that's all.
Okay. Well, again, we appreciate you. We miss you all. We will really be excited to see everyone in person again. Stay tuned for our next meeting. And all of our email blasts that are coming out recently, we're going to continue that and communicating with you all. We want you all to stay well and safe, and we hope to hear from you soon. Bye.
Bye.